Jim, the first question we need to find out is this injury a problem for Jannik? We haven't discussed that yet here in our studio. Do you know any more yet?
Yeah, well, first of all, when I went onto the court, I walked out right by his team and I, saying congratulations to them. And Darren Caho's like, mate, keep the interview short. He's cramping. I'm like, I know. I saw him drinking the pickle juice. So I went over to him and I said, hey, do we want to keep this short? And Jannik's like, no, I'll talk about whatever. Do whatever you want. So we had a little chat. I didn't go long with him, but I did ask him what he was dealing with, and he said he was cramping. So I don't think it's an injury issue, which is good news. We saw him cramp up in the semifinals of Roland Garros last year against Carlos Alcaraz. It started in his forearm, and then he had some problems with his legs. Here you see his back locking up, but he got a little bit of massage, he got some hydration, and he got the pickle juice, Laura, and that's always the key, it seems.
But how do you interpret the fact that he is cramping at semi-final level, sure, but the fact that this match wasn't super physical? There was some long rallies, but it was only 2.5 hours. You know, it's not the toughest that he could have faced.
Well, what I would suggest is possibly this is related to how he was. There's the pickle juice, by the way. It was related to how he. It is disgusting. It's related to how he was feeling in his match against Holger Rune. Right? He wasn't well against Holger Rune. He admitted that he was dizzy. He was taken off court by the doctor. That's a match he could have easily lost in extreme heat. And now it's cool. So that's why if he's having problems tonight, I think that's probably related to that. He's probably still not back to full fitness.
So what's pickle juice meant to do, guys? Give us an insight. What's pickle juice meant to do?
It's salt.
Just salt.
It's salt.
It's salt, but Jannik actually doesn't usually swallow it either. He swirls it around in his mouth. Having seen this up close at the US Open, unfortunately, he swirls it around in his mouth and then usually spits it straight back out, because you don't need to actually ingest it for it to do the job, because it's just pure salt. So yeah, it's absolutely vile.
Tim, you were commentating. No, we're not going there with pickle juice. You won't get in the studio. Tim, obviously you were commentating. Did it look in that last set as well for Jannik Sinner that he was almost rushing to get off court quickly? His forehand speeds went up, I think it was about 3 kilometres per hour. Not drastically, but enough that you felt he'd had enough of that match.
Yeah, it's still at the beginning of the third set. There were a few opportunities for Shelton. He had the break points, and I think in the back of Sinner's mind, it was like, I've got to maintain my intensity because I don't want to go into a fourth set and certainly not a fifth set. And when you watch those last 5 games, I think Sinner was even more aggressive. He was taking the ball down the line and really looking to dictate. And 7-6, 6-2, 6-2, it sort of looks pretty straightforward, but it felt at times, it was probably a little bit closer than that.
Jim and Laura, I wanted to when he faces Zverev, that's way more physical, I would think. So then I would be very concerned for Jannik Sinner. Wouldn't you guys agree?
I wouldn't say concern, because, he'll do whatever he can to recover over the next 48 hours. Sunday's meant to be a little bit hotter, but by no means scorching. And then they're playing at night, of course. But, I think any matchup against Zverev, you know that there's going to be longer rallies. And the fact that one set for Zverev today was 1 hour and 17 minutes, you can anticipate that it's going to be long. So that kind of forces you in a way to play more aggressive, doesn't it, Jim?
You got to hope that he's going to use this next couple of days to really refuel, rest up, and make sure that he's ready to go, because it's going to be physical against Sasha. There's no question about that. Sasha's a point extender. The last time they played Cincinnati in a semifinal. It was 7-6 in the third. It was incredibly physical, like over 3 hours physical. So you can imagine best of 5 sets, Matsy. This thing could be incredibly difficult. So we'll see where it lands, but that's going to be a big part of the storyline without question.
Yeah, Jim, just, from the Americans' point of view, Shelton, in this matchup, with his weapons, we talked a lot about his serve. He served and volleyed 3 times in the whole match. He only came to the net 25 times. Do you think this is an element that he's got to bring to his game more often?
Absolutely do. I thought before the match that we'd be seeing more of that, perhaps out of respect or fear of Sinner's return to serve and passing shots. He didn't do that, but I was as impressed with his ground stroke game as I've ever been. I've seen big improvements in that area for him, and I think that, he's still evolving very much. I heard you talking about him, and I totally agree. He's still improving, evolving. I talked quickly to Simone Vagnozzi, one of Sinner's coaches, and he said, look, when we played him before, he served better than tonight, but we haven't seen him with the ground strokes like this. This was like his slice was really good. They were impressed with what he brought to the table today, but it's still very much a work in progress for him. The fact that he's already played his second semifinal in a major and he still has so many areas to work on is a net positive, I think, for Ben Shelton.
Yeah.
Yeah, back to the drawing board for Ben Shelton. It has been a great tournament, though. His second Grand Slam semi-final. We now know, though, Jannik Sinner will go head-to-head with Sasha Zverev, who's been playing brilliantly all tournament, but he's also been winning fans around the world with his words of respect.
Please, guys, don't boo a player when he goes out with injury. If he cannot continue a tennis match, it really means that he cannot continue a tennis match.
I think it was one of the nicest speeches I've heard in person, because coming from an athlete, speaking about another athlete's injury, I think Sasha knows the situation better than anyone else. Remembering what happened in 2022 at the French Open, it was a very warm-hearted and heartful speech, and then he did very well. It's not how you want to win any match, especially a semis at the Australian Open, but it sometimes happens. But at the end of the day, we're in the final, and I am happy about it. I feel like Sasha deserves it one way or another. Of course, we're in the final. We must be happy about it, and we have to look forward to Sunday's night session.
Yeah, his brother Misha there just saying he deserves it. And Jim, I'm going to come to you because we haven't spoken to you about this matchup yet. I know you were there watching it. Zverev does deserve it. It's not how he'll want to go into this final. Do you think he's in the best shape that he has been in recent times? We spoke to him about having Jez Green, the fitness coach, recently re-added to his team. Do you think this is his best chance at success to date?
No, I think Dominic Thiem in the final of the U.S. Open certainly is better on paper than going up against the world #1 who has won 2 majors. But I think he's playing a better level of tennis. If you want that piece of the puzzle, I think without a doubt, he's improved a bunch since then. And he talked about it with his serve and the change of the ball toss that his brother Misha is responsible for. Now his serve is far more consistent. His forehand at times has been excellent here in this tournament. I thought he played a very conservative match today. Perhaps that was intentional because of what Novak was dealing with physically. He was strapped up. So, the first set was an hour and 20 minutes, something along those lines. So he got what he wanted, which was the win. But he's going to have to play a far more structured match to beat Jannik Sinner, in my opinion. He's not going to be able to play that kind of conservative tennis and win.
Yeah, because at times today he was 3 meters behind the baseline, and you just think he can play so much more aggressive, he can be up the court, and yet he doesn't. Is it the fact that it was a semi-final, do you think?
I think it must have been situational, right? It must have been because he felt like he could outlast Novak physically, and he was proven right with that one. And perhaps that might be the strategy with Sinner if he reflects on Sinner cramping up tonight in 2 hours and 20 minutes or so. We don't really know. But what I do know is that Roger Federer rightfully said last year, with no malice, that Sasha has nearly everything, but one thing he needs to do is that at the big moments, he needs to be more decisive and more aggressive. He's been too passive, and I think that is absolutely true. I think that when crunch time comes, Sasha has to be willing to take it on and try and win the points, as opposed to hoping that his opponent loses the points, because Jannik Sinner, if he's in reasonable health, is not going to do that.
Mats, we asked him exactly that, didn't we, when he came into the interview as well? Yeah. You asked him about the aggression in his game.
Yeah, that worked in the 80s, Jim. Not anymore. Yeah, no, he's become way more aggressive, though, but it's like Jim's saying, it has to be on the big points, and that's... It takes practice to do that, and the only practice you can get is when you play big matches. And let's face it, we don't play that many big matches that you can get big practice. So he has to do it in the early rounds and in every tournament and all the time for him to be comfortable doing it in the finals on Sunday against Jannik Sinner at 2 sets all and 4 all in the 5th set. You can't back up then.
Also a question, this is just open to all of you as well. The fact that we keep seeing Novak now getting injured. It's happened before. Are you sensing a similar theme to when we saw Federer and Nadal with their reoccurring injuries? Do you sense a similar pattern here with Novak?
I think only time will tell, because you've also got to reflect that Djokovic has had injuries in Australia that he's been able to deal with and come through and win the tournament. And there's no doubt as you get older, we know that, you know, the injuries are probably a little bit more likely. They take a little bit longer to recover from. But, you know, I think I reflect more on the level of tennis and see the way that he was playing and was moving when everything was 100%, and I think that's what gives me the belief that he's going to keep going for a little while. What do you think, Matt?
Oh, I think he's going to keep going for as long as he can. I don't think that he's going to run out of motivation, which is the most important part of the whole situation. Of course, the health is number one, but I would think with the way and his lifestyle that he's going to be able to come back and be dangerous one more time.
Yeah, it's not just his lifestyle. It's also the stretching and the flexibility, which can become more difficult over age. So I would think that his body is really more like a 32-year-old's body than a 37-year-old's body. But this game is so physical these days. These guys are sliding in and out of the corners, chasing balls down. He's been doing it for a long, long time. You're going to pick up some injuries along the way. It happens to everyone, not just the guys over 30. But his tennis is there. If his body cooperates, I think he gets his hands on at least one more major.
I'm sure he'll be happy that you've just said he's like a 32-year-old. I think he'd be happy about you rounding it down. But do you think with someone even of Novak's quality that he can go into the slams without playing tournaments beforehand? Because although he came and played Brisbane, you know, he didn't really want to play at the end of the year. He called the season quits early. Can he go to somewhere like Wimbledon and not play matches before?
I think his tennis can, because I think he can get through the first couple rounds and use those as practice to get going, because he is just simply that good and has no weaknesses to speak of. The question is, does his body come in battle tested, and does the jarring aspect of playing matches, which you cannot replicate in practice, you just simply can't get the adrenaline to come into your body, does that cause him to get injured? So that sort of would be my concern. I wouldn't be worried about his tennis. I'd be worried about his body not responding to the strain of real match play, fellas and ladies.